Welcome, Whispering Bee family. Today we will listen to some betrayals that don't announce themselves with shouting or slammed doors. They arrive quietly, dressed in family dinners and polite requests, slowly draining you until one day you wake up and barely recognize the person staring back in the mirror. They come wrapped in words like family and obligation and love, words that should mean safety, but somehow leave you feeling emptier with each passing day. This is the story of how Tanya almost lost herself to people who smiled while they took everything, and how she finally found the courage to choose herself. This is a story about the price of silence and the cost of finally speaking up. The wedding had been beautiful. Everyone said so. White roses cascading down the archway, soft music playing as Tanya walked down the aisle toward Conrad, her heart so full she thought it might burst. The venue was a small garden estate just outside the city, the kind of place Tanya had dreamed about since she was a little girl. Fairy lights were strung between trees, creating a canopy of stars even in daylight. The guests had smiled and cried in all the right moments. Tanya's mother had dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief throughout the entire ceremony. Her father had walked her down the aisle with pride radiating from every step. She remembered the way Conrad looked at her that day, eyes bright with promise, whispering that he would love her forever as they stood at the altar. His voice had trembled with emotion when he said his vows. "I promise to stand by you, to protect you, to cherish you for all the days of my life." She believed him. Why wouldn't she? Love was supposed to be the beginning of something beautiful. Marriage was supposed to be a partnership, a team, two people against the world. They had met 2 years earlier at a mutual friend's birthday party. Conrad had been charming, attentive, funny in a self-deprecating way that made Tanya feel comfortable. He worked in marketing for a mid-sized firm, had dreams of starting his own agency someday. He talked about travel and books and made Tanya laugh until her sides hurt. Their courtship had been sweet, traditional. Dinner dates and long walks, meeting each other's friends, talking until 3 in the morning about everything and nothing. When he proposed, 6 months before the wedding, he had taken her to the same garden where they would eventually marry. He got down on one knee beside a fountain, the water trickling softly behind him, and asked her to be his wife. Tanya had said yes. She loved him. She wanted to build a life with him. She could see their future stretching out ahead of them, full of possibility. But if Tanya had known what she knows now, she would have paid more attention during the reception. She would have noticed the way Conrad's mother, Felicia, rearranged the centerpieces without asking, her lips pressed into a thin line of dissatisfaction. 3 times during the cocktail hour, Tanya had glimpsed Felicia moving vases, adjusting flower arrangements, her face pinched with what looked like frustration. When Tanya had complimented the decorations, Felicia had smiled tightly and said, "Well, they are lovely, though I did suggest the lilies instead of roses. Lilies photograph better." She would have caught the side glances between Conrad's father, Robert, and his younger brother, George, as they whispered in the corner during the toasts, looking at her like she was a new investment rather than a bride. She had noticed them huddled together, but at the time she had assumed they were just sharing a private family moment. Now, looking back, she could see the calculating way they had assessed her. George had asked her about her job. "What do you do again?" "Oh, software development. That must pay well." And when she had mentioned she had just received a promotion to senior developer, Robert had perked up immediately. Wonderful, wonderful. Good to have someone in the family with a stable career. She would have heard the edge in Felicia's voice when she pulled Conrad aside during the father-daughter dance and said, just loud enough for Tanya to overhear from across the room, "I hope she understands what it means to be part of this family. There are expectations." At the time, Tanya had chosen to interpret it generously. She was joining their family. Of course there would be expectations. She could be a good daughter-in-law. She could make this work. She was a people-pleaser by nature, had always been the type to smooth over conflict, to find compromise, to make everyone happy. That was her strength, wasn't it? Her ability to adapt, to care, to give. That was her first mistake, thinking that love and effort would be enough. Thinking that if she just tried hard enough, gave enough, bent enough, everything would work out. She did not yet understand that some people see kindness as weakness, generosity as permission, silence as agreement. The honeymoon had been a brief escape to a beach resort in Mexico. 5 days of sunshine and fruity drinks, and pretending that the world outside did not exist. Conrad had been attentive, romantic, everything Tanya had hoped for. They had walked along the beach at sunset, made love with the windows open to let in the ocean breeze, talked about their future with excitement and hope. They discussed baby names even though they had agreed to wait a few years. They fantasized about the home they would own someday, the trips they would take, the life they would build together. On their last night, sitting on their hotel balcony watching the waves crash against the shore, Conrad had squeezed Tanya's hand and said, "I cannot wait to start our real life together." Tanya had smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "This is our real life. It is already started." "You know what I mean," he had said, kissing the top of her head. "Coming home, building something, being a family." Being a family. At the time, those words had filled Tanya with warmth. She did not yet know how heavy they would become. The first week after they returned, Tanya threw herself into settling them into their apartment. Conrad and Tanya had been living separately before the wedding, and combining their two lives into one space was both exciting and chaotic. Boxes were stacked in every room. Tanya had taken 3 days off work to organize everything, determined to make their small one-bedroom apartment feel like a real home. She had spent weeks before the wedding painting the living room a soft cream color that caught the morning light beautifully. She had scoured thrift stores and consignment shops for furniture that fit their budget, but still had character. A vintage coffee table with delicate turned legs. A bookshelf she had refinished herself, sanding away years of scratches and staining it a rich walnut color. Curtains she had picked out after visiting 4 different stores, looking for just the right shade of blue-gray. She was proud of their home. It was small, yes. The kitchen was narrow enough that only one person could comfortably cook at a time. The bathroom had old tiles that she dreamed of replacing someday. The windows overlooked a busy street, and you could hear traffic at all hours. But it was theirs. She had made it warm and inviting with soft throw pillows, plants on the windowsill, framed photos of the two of them on the walls. This was where they would build their life together. On the 4th morning home, Tanya was still in her pajamas, her hair pulled into a messy bun, unpacking a box of kitchen items and trying to figure out where everything should go, when the doorbell rang at 7 in the morning. She glanced at the clock, frowning. Who would be visiting this early? Conrad was still in bed, exhausted from helping her rearrange furniture the night before. She padded to the door in her bare feet, expecting perhaps a package delivery or maybe their landlord stopping by. She opened the door to find Felicia standing there with 3 large Tupperware containers stacked in her arms, her face bright with an overly cheerful smile. Robert stood right behind her carrying a toolbox, his expression neutral, but appraising as his eyes scanned past Tanya into the apartment. "Good morning, sweetheart," Felicia said brightly, her voice sing-song and loud enough to wake the neighbors. Before Tanya could respond, Felicia brushed past her into the apartment like she had every right to be there. "We brought breakfast. I made my famous casserole. I know how busy newlyweds are, so I thought I would help out. No need to thank me. That is what family does." Robert followed, nodding curtly at Tanya. "Morning. Thought I would check your water pressure while we are here. Conrad mentioned it was low last week." Tanya blinked, still half asleep, her mind struggling to catch up. "Oh, thank you, but you really did not have to come all this way. We could have handled the water pressure ourselves. And we have plenty of food. You should not have gone to the trouble." But Felicia was already in the kitchen, setting down the containers and opening cabinets like she owned the place. Her hands moved quickly, efficiently, rearranging Tanya's newly organized dishes. "Nonsense. Family helps family. Now, where do you keep your plates? These cabinets are so oddly organized. Who puts plates on the top shelf? You will strain your back reaching for them every day." That comment sat strange in Tanya's chest, a small pebble of discomfort that she tried to swallow down. They were trying to be helpful, she told herself. That was good, wasn't it? They cared enough to drive across town early in the morning. That showed love. Right. Conrad emerged from the bedroom, yawning, wearing sweatpants and a wrinkled t-shirt, his hair sticking up at odd angles. "Mom, Dad, what are you guys doing here? Did we have plans I forgot about?" "Just checking in on you too," Felicia said, pulling out a chair at their small kitchen table and sitting down as if settling in for the day. "You know how I worry. You have not even been home a week. I wanted to make sure you were settling in all right. A mother never stops worrying, you know. That will be you someday, Tanya, when you have children." The way she said it, "when you have children," not if, made Tanya feel like that decision had already been made for her. And just like that, they stayed for 3 hours. 3 hours of Felicia walking through every room, commenting on everything. The furniture, the paint color, the neighborhood, the building itself. Each comment was delivered with a smile, wrapped in concern, but underneath was something else. Something that made Tanya feel like nothing she had done was quite good enough. It became a pattern that Tanya could not quite name, but could definitely feel. The unannounced visits. The little comments that sounded like care but felt like criticism. Felicia would walk through the apartment, running her finger along the bookshelf, examining dust that may or may not have been there, her face registering what looked like disappointment. "You really should get heavier curtains," Felicia said on her third visit, pulling at the fabric Tanya had so carefully chosen. "These let in too much light in the morning. It is making the furniture look cheap. And honestly, dear, the color is a bit too modern. Something more traditional would suit the space better. I have curtains in my storage unit you could have. They are a lovely brocade, very elegant." Tanya forced a smile. "I like these curtains. They make the room feel airy." Felicia's smile tightened. "Well, it is your choice, of course. I'm just trying to help." On another visit, Felicia circled the living room like a realtor appraising a property. "This couch, did you get this secondhand? I could tell immediately. You can see the wear on the arms. You know, we have a perfectly good leather sectional in storage that we are not using. We could bring it over. Much better quality than this." "We chose this couch together," Tanya said, her voice still polite but with an edge creeping in. "We like it." "Oh, I know, dear. I am sure you do. I am just saying, when you have guests over, you want to make a good impression. First impressions matter." Robert had opinions too, though his were delivered with a gruff matter-of-factness that somehow felt even more invasive. "The neighborhood is a bit rough, is it not?" he said one evening when they stopped by during dinner. "I saw some questionable people on the corner when we pulled up. Young men just standing around. Makes you wonder what they are up to. I worry about you too, about Tanya especially. A woman alone during the day while Conrad is at work. Have you thought about getting a security system?" "I know a guy who could install one cheap." "I feel safe here," Tanya said, though even as she said it, she felt a seed of doubt being planted. Were those men on the corner dangerous? She had never thought so before, had walked past them countless times without a second thought. But now, with Robert's words hanging in the air, she felt herself questioning her own judgment. "I am sure you do," Robert said. "But safe and actually being safe are two different things, just something to think about." Every comment was delivered with concern, with helpfulness, with the authority of people who had lived longer, knew better, wanted only what was best. But underneath, Tanya felt herself shrinking, second-guessing her choices, wondering if maybe they were right, maybe her curtains were wrong, maybe the neighborhood was dangerous, maybe she had made poor decisions and they were just trying to help her see that. And every time, Tanya looked to Conrad, waiting for him to say something, to draw a line, to tell his parents that they were fine, that their home was their own, that Tanya had excellent taste and good judgment and didn't need constant correction. But every time, Conrad just shrugged. "That is just how they are," he would say later when they were alone, after his parents had finally left and Tanya could breathe again. "They mean well. They are just protective. They have always been involved in my life. That is how our family works." "But this is our home," Tanya said once, trying to keep her voice level, trying not to sound like she was complaining. "Should not we get to make our own decisions about our own space?" "Of course we do," Conrad said, kissing her forehead like she was being silly. "And we are. They are just offering suggestions. You do not have to take them. They are just trying to help." But it did not feel like help. It felt like something else. Something Tanya didn't have words for yet. It felt like invasion, like erosion, like slowly, visit by visit, comment by comment, her autonomy was being chipped away. Tanya wanted to argue, but she didn't, because she loved him. because she wanted this marriage to work. Because maybe she thought she was being too sensitive. Maybe this was what family was. Maybe she needed to adjust her expectations. After all, Conrad had grown up with this. He seemed fine with it. Maybe the problem was her. So she smiled and stayed quiet and let Felicia rearrange her kitchen cabinets and let Robert install a security system she did not want, and slowly, quietly began to lose pieces of herself she did not even know she was giving away. 2 months into the marriage, the financial requests began. The first one arrived on a sunny Sunday afternoon that had started so promisingly. Conrad and Tanya had slept in late, made pancakes together in their narrow kitchen, laughing when Conrad accidentally flipped one onto the floor. They had plans to spend the day doing nothing, maybe watch a movie, take a walk in the park. It was the kind of lazy Sunday that Tanya loved, the kind that made marriage feel like a warm blanket. Then Conrad's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and Tanya saw his expression change, just slightly, a tightening around his eyes, a tension in his jaw. "It is my dad," he said, stepping into the bedroom to take the call. He was in there for 20 minutes. When he came out, he looked uncomfortable, rubbing the back of his neck the way he did when he was nervous. "Everything okay?" Tanya asked, setting down her coffee mug. Conrad sat down next to her on the couch, not quite meeting her eyes. "Yeah, well, sort of. It is about George." Tanya waited. "He is starting a business," Conrad said, his words coming out carefully like he was testing each one. "An online retail thing, dropshipping. He has been researching it for months. He thinks it could really take off." "That sounds exciting," Tanya said, though she was confused why Conrad looked so stressed about his brother's entrepreneurial venture. "Yeah," Conrad said. "The thing is, he needs startup capital. To get the inventory, set up the website, run ads, business stuff." "Okay," Tanya said slowly, a sinking feeling starting in her stomach. "And?" Conrad hesitated. "He asked if we could lend him some money just temporarily. He will pay us back once the business is up and running. He has a whole plan. He showed me the projections. It could really work." There it was, the ask, dressed up as an opportunity, as family support, as temporary. "How much?" Tanya asked, though she already knew she would not like the answer. Conrad rubbed his neck again. 5,000. The number hit her like cold water. $5,000. That was a significant chunk of their savings. Money they had been carefully putting aside for emergencies, maybe a down payment on a better place someday, a safety net in case anything went wrong. They had been married 2 months and already had less than 10,000 in their joint savings account. "Conrad, that is a lot," she said carefully, trying to keep her voice neutral. Not accusatory. "George has never run a business before. What if it does not work out? What if he cannot pay us back?" "He is my brother," Conrad said, and there was something defensive in his tone now, something that made Tanya feel like she was the one being unreasonable. "Family helps family. He would do the same for us if we needed it." Would he, though? Tanya wanted to ask. George was 26, still lived with his parents, had never held a job for more than a year. He had enthusiasms that burned bright and fast and then fizzled out. Last year it had been cryptocurrency day trading. The year before, a podcast that lasted 3 episodes. But Tanya did not say any of that. She did not want to sound like she was attacking Conrad's family. "Can we at least see a business plan?" she asked instead. "Or talk to him about it, understand the risks, maybe sign something that says he will pay us back by a certain date." Conrad's jaw tightened. "You are making this a bigger deal than it is. It is just a loan, between family. You do not make your brother sign a contract. That is not how family works." $5,000 is not just anything, Conrad. That is our emergency fund. What if we have an emergency? "We will be fine," Conrad said, his voice taking on an edge now. "You are always so worried about money. We both have good jobs. We can save it back up. But this is a chance for George to build something, to have his own business. And we can help him do that. That is what family does." "It is also what family does for us," Tanya said quietly. "We should be saving for our future, too." "This is not about us versus them," Conrad said, standing up now, starting to pace. This is about helping someone we love when they need it. I thought you understood that. I thought you were part of this family. And there it was, the unspoken accusation. If you were really part of this family, you would say yes. If you really loved me, this would not be a question. Tanya felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back. She was being selfish. Conrad was right. It was just money. They could save it back up. And maybe George's business would work. Maybe he would pay them back. Maybe this was what being a good wife, a good family member looked like. Supporting each other. Sacrificing. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, we can lend him the money. Conrad's face softened immediately. He sat back down, pulling her into a hug. Thank you, really. This means a lot to George, to all of us. You are the best. But as Tanya sat there in his arms, she did not feel like the best. She felt like she had just lost something, though she could not quite name what. They transferred the money that afternoon. George sent a text saying thanks and a smiley face emoji. No business plan, no timeline for repayment, just thanks and a promise to pay them back soon. Weeks turned into months. The business, as far as Tanya could tell from the few times George mentioned it, was not going well. The margins were tighter than expected. The ads were not converting. The inventory was sitting in his parents' garage unsold. But there was never a mention of paying back the loan, and Conrad never brought it up. 3 weeks after the George loan, Robert called again. His tone was casual, almost too casual, like he was asking about the weather. Hey, Conrad, got a minute? The roof on the house is leaking. We noticed it during that storm last week. Water is coming through the ceiling in the guest bedroom. We need to get it fixed before winter or it is going to get worse. You know how your mother worries about these things. She is already stressed enough. Oh man, that sucks, Conrad said, putting the phone on speaker so he could keep eating dinner. How much are we talking? Contractor quoted $3,500, but I figured we could split it. You chip in half, we will cover the rest. Seems fair. It is the family home, after all. You grew up under that roof. Feels right to help maintain it. Conrad agreed before even looking at Tanya. Yeah, of course, Dad. I will transfer it tomorrow. When Tanya found out later that evening, she tried to stay calm. She took a deep breath, counted to 5, reminded herself not to be dramatic. Conrad, we just gave George $5,000 3 weeks ago. We cannot keep doing this. We need to rebuild our savings. It is my parents, Tanya. They have done so much for me growing up. I owe them. You do not owe them your entire paycheck. It is not my entire paycheck. Stop exaggerating. It is $1,750. That is not going to break us. It is not just $1,750 though, is it? It is $5,000 here, $1,750 there. Where does it end? It ends when my family stops needing help, Conrad snapped. What do you want me to do, Tanya? Tell my parents their roof can leak. Tell George his business can fail. They are my family. I'm your family too, Tanya said quietly. Conrad softened slightly. I know you are, and I love you, but this is different. They are my parents. They raised me. They sacrificed for me. This is just me returning the favor. But it did not feel like Conrad returning anything. It felt like Tanya giving, over and over, without any say in the matter. Could you at least ask me before agreeing? She said. It is our money. Should not we both decide? I did not think it was a big deal, Conrad said, his voice tired now, like she was exhausting him. I did not know I needed permission to help my own parents. It is not about permission. It is about partnership, about making decisions together. Fine, Conrad said curtly. Next time I will ask, happy. He transferred the money the next morning, without mentioning it again. The money kept flowing out like water through cupped hands. A car repair for Felicia that somehow cost $3,000, even though the car was only worth $5. A credit card payment for George, who had maxed out his cards trying to keep the failing business afloat. A last-minute flight for Robert's sister, who needed help moving across the country, plus money for the moving truck, plus money to help her get settled. Every time it was framed as temporary, as family obligation, as the right thing to do, and every time Tanya's protests were met with the same responses. You are being selfish. It is just money. We can make more. Why are you making this so difficult? I thought you cared about family. This is just how we do things. Tanya began to feel crazy, like she was the problem, like wanting to keep some of their own money for their own future was somehow wrong, somehow small-minded and mean. She started second-guessing every financial instinct she had. Maybe she was too cautious. Maybe she was not generous enough. Maybe this was what real families did, and she was just not used to it because her own family had been more reserved, more boundaried. She stopped looking at their bank account because seeing the balance drop month after month made her chest tight with anxiety. She stopped making budgets because Conrad would just override them anyway whenever his family called. She stopped planning for the future because the future felt impossible when the present kept draining away. And Conrad, for his part, seemed oblivious. Or maybe he chose to be oblivious. He went to work, came home, watched television, made jokes, kissed her goodnight. He did not see how Tanya lay awake at night doing mental math, calculating how long until they would have nothing left, worrying about what would happen when they inevitably needed something and the money was gone. He did not see because he did not want to see, because seeing would mean choosing, and Conrad had already made his choice. Then Felicia started talking about Tanya's salary. The moment it happened, Tanya knew something fundamental had shifted. This was no longer about helping out occasionally. This was about ownership. It happened over dinner at Conrad's parents' house on a rainy Thursday evening. Felicia had insisted they come over, said she was making pot roast, and it had been too long since they had all sat down together as a family. Tanya had been tired from a long day at work, had wanted nothing more than to go home and collapse on the couch, but Conrad had already said yes, so she put on a smile and went. The house was exactly as Felicia kept it, immaculate and slightly cold, decorated in beiges and creams with family photos on every available surface. Most of them were of Conrad and George as children. There was exactly one photo from Tanya and Conrad's wedding, relegated to a shelf in the hallway. They were all sitting around the dining table, the good china out, candles lit, making small talk about the weather and work and neighborhood gossip. Tanya had just mentioned, in passing, that she had gotten a small raise at work. It was not a huge raise. Just a 5% cost of living increase, but she was proud of it. She had been working hard, taking on extra projects, staying late to help her team meet deadlines. "Oh, how wonderful," Felicia said, and Tanya should have heard the calculation in her voice, but she was too pleased with herself to notice. "That is such good news, dear. How much more will you be making?" Tanya told her, an extra $4,000 a year. Not life-changing money, but enough to help them rebuild their savings, maybe take a small vacation. Felicia's eyes lit up with an expression Tanya had learned to recognize. It was the same expression she got when she found a piece of furniture at an estate sale that was worth more than the seller knew. It was the look of someone spotting opportunity. "Well, that is just perfect timing," Felicia said, setting down her fork and leaning forward slightly. "That extra money will really help with the family expenses." Tanya paused, her own fork halfway to her mouth. "Sorry, what?" Felicia smiled, that tight smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Well, you and Conrad do not have children yet, and you are living in that small apartment, so your costs are relatively low. It only makes sense to contribute more to the family. We are all in this together, after all. That is what family means." Robert nodded in agreement, dabbing at his mouth with a napkin. "Your mother is absolutely right. Family is everything. We take care of each other. When one person does well, we all do well. It is about pooling resources, making sure everyone is taken care of." Tanya set down her fork, her appetite suddenly gone. She looked at Conrad, waiting for him to say something. Anything. But he was staring at his plate, cutting his meat into smaller and smaller pieces, apparently fascinated by his food. "I appreciate that sentiment," Tanya said slowly, choosing her words carefully, her heart starting to pound. "But my salary is for our household. Conrad and I have our own expenses and goals. We have been trying to rebuild our savings after helping George and with the roof repairs and the rest." Felicia's smile tightened further. It looked painful now. Of course, dear, I am not saying you should not have anything for yourselves. I am just saying that family comes first. That is a value we hold very dear. I am sure you understand that. I mean, we have always been there for Conrad, and now Conrad is there for us. That is how it works. That is how healthy families work. George, who had been quiet up until now, chimed in. Yeah, I mean, when my business takes off, I will be able to help out too. It is all circular. What goes around comes around. Tanya wanted to point out that his business had been failing for months, that he still had not paid back the original loan, that what goes around clearly only went one direction in this family. But she held her tongue. I think what Tanya is trying to say, Robert said, his voice taking on that patronizing tone that made Tanya's skin crawl, is that she is not used to how close families operate. She comes from a different background, smaller family, less interconnected. It is natural for her to be more, shall we say, individualistic, but that is okay. She will learn. Marriage is about joining families, adopting new ways of doing things. The implication was clear. If Tanya did not understand this, if she did not agree to this, then she was not really part of the family. She was an outsider. She was the problem. Conrad, Tanya said, her voice stronger now, do you have thoughts on this? Conrad finally looked up from his plate. His face was conflicted, uncomfortable, like a child caught between two parents arguing. I mean, I think we can figure out a balance. We do not have to decide anything tonight. A balance sounds wonderful, Felicia said quickly, as if that settled it. I knew you would both be reasonable about this. See, this is what I love about our family. We can talk about anything. No topic is off limits. We are so blessed to have such open communication. But it did not feel like open communication. It felt like an ambush. It felt like a decision had already been made, and Tanya was just being informed. That night, Tanya lay awake staring at the ceiling while Conrad snored softly beside her. She felt something shifting inside her, some foundational belief crumbling. She had thought marriage meant partnership. She had thought joining a family meant mutual respect and care, that she would be welcomed as an equal, that her voice would matter. But this did not feel like care. This felt like colonization. Like her life, her money, her choices were all being slowly absorbed into something that had nothing to do with her well-being at all. She was not a daughter. She was not even really a wife. She was a resource to be managed and distributed at Felicia's discretion. She wanted to talk to Conrad about it, but every time she tried, he shut her down. He was so deeply enmeshed with his family that he could not see what was happening. Or maybe he could see it, and he just did not care enough to stop it. Maybe his comfort mattered more than her dignity. Maybe his parents' approval mattered more than her feelings. That thought was the one that kept her awake most nights. The thought that she had married someone who would choose his parents over her every single time. That she had signed up for a lifetime of being second place, of being the person who gave and gave and gave and never received anything in return. 6 months into the marriage, everything came to a head. Felicia called on a Tuesday afternoon. Her voice had that particular brightness that Tanya had learned to dread. Sweetheart, we are having a family dinner this Saturday, 6 o'clock. Do not be late. It was not a request. It never was. When Saturday came, Tanya felt a strange sense of foreboding. She could not explain it, just a tightness in her chest as they drove to Conrad's parents' house. Conrad was quiet too, his hands gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly. You okay? She asked. Yeah, he said, but he did not look at her. Just tired. The house was lit up when they arrived, warm light spilling from the windows. George was already there, leaning against the kitchen counter with a beer. Robert sat at the head of the dining table, and Felicia was pulling a roast chicken from the oven, her face flushed from the heat. There they are, Felicia said, setting the chicken down. Come sit, we have a lot to talk about. That tightness in Tanya's chest grew stronger. She took her seat next to Conrad, across from George, and watched as Felicia and Robert exchanged a look that said this was planned, rehearsed. They made it through the appetizers with small talk. The weather, work, mundane things, but Tanya could feel the real conversation waiting, coiled like a spring. Then, as Felicia served the main course, Robert cleared his throat. He folded his hands on the table, leaning forward slightly, his expression serious. "We have been doing a lot of thinking," he began, "about the future, about what is best for this family." Tanya's stomach dropped. "We are not getting any younger," Felicia added, glancing at Robert, "and we want to make sure everyone is taken care of, secure." Robert nodded. "We have been looking at properties, investment properties. Real estate is the smartest move right now. Build equity, create generational wealth." "Okay," Conrad said slowly. "That sounds good." "We found a house," Robert continued. "A good one. 4 bedrooms, nice neighborhood, solid bones. It needs some work, but it has potential." Tanya felt the trap closing before he even finished. "We think you two should buy it," Felicia said, smiling like she had just offered them a gift. "It is a perfect investment." Conrad blinked. "Mom, we cannot afford a house right now." "Sure you can," Robert said, waving a hand dismissively. "Between your salary and Tanya's, you can get a mortgage. We already talked to a guy. He can make the numbers work." Tanya's heart was pounding now. "Wait, you want us to buy a house, for the family?" "Well, it would be under Conrad's name, of course," Felicia said, like it was obvious. "But it is for all of us, a family asset." There it was, the truth bare and ugly. Tanya set down her fork. "Would my name be on the deed?" Silence dropped over the table like a heavy blanket. Felicia and Robert exchanged another look. George shifted uncomfortably. "Well," Robert said slowly, carefully, "that is not really how we do things." "How you do things," Tanya repeated, her voice sharper than she intended. "This is a family investment," Felicia explained, her tone taking on a patronizing edge. "Conrad is our son. It makes sense for it to be in his name. You are his wife. You will benefit too." "But my name would not be on it," Tanya said. It was not a question. "Legally, no." Robert admitted, "But that is just a formality." Just a formality. Her money, her credit, her future, just a formality. Tanya looked at Conrad, really looked at him, waiting for him to say something. To tell his parents this was insane, that they could not ask this, that his wife deserved to be treated as an equal partner. But Conrad was staring at his plate again, silent. "Conrad," Tanya said quietly, "say something." He finally looked up, his face conflicted. "I mean, maybe we should at least think about it." Those words hit Tanya like a physical blow. He was actually considering this. After everything, after all the money they had already given, after every boundary crossed and every dismissal, he was willing to put them in debt for a house that would not even have her name on it. Tanya stood up. Her chair scraped against the floor, loud in the sudden silence. "I need some air," she said, her voice trembling. She walked out onto the back porch, her hands shaking. The night air was cold, but she barely felt it. All she could feel was the anger and hurt and disbelief crashing over her in waves. How had it come to this? How would she let it come to this? Behind her, she heard the door open. Conrad stepped out, closing it softly behind him. "Tanya," he said, his voice low, "you are overreacting." She spun to face him. "Overreacting? Conrad, they want us to buy a house that would not even be in my name, using my money, my credit. How is that overreacting?" "It is not like that," he said, frustration creeping into his tone. "You are twisting it." "Then explain it to me," Tanya said, her voice breaking. "Explain how this is fair. Explain how any of this has been fair." Conrad ran a hand through his hair. "They are my family, Tanya. They have always been there for me." "And what am I?" she asked. "What am I to you, Conrad?" He hesitated, and in that hesitation, Tanya found her answer. She was secondary. She would always be secondary. "I cannot do this," she said quietly. "Cannot do what?" "This, any of this. I cannot keep being the person everyone takes from and no one protects." "You are being dramatic again." There was that word, dramatic, like her feelings did not matter, like wanting basic respect was too much to ask. Tanya looked at him, and for the first time, she saw him clearly. Not the man she had fallen in love with, not the man who had promised to cherish her, but the man he actually was. A man who would choose his parents' approval over his wife's dignity. A man who valued peace over partnership. "I want to go home," she said. They drove back in silence. And that night, while Conrad slept, Tanya lay awake and made a decision. She was done. Not in a dramatic, explosive way, but in a quiet, certain way that settled deep in her bones. She was done sacrificing herself for people who did not value her, done being silent, done hoping things would change. The next morning, Tanya started planning. She did not tell Conrad, not yet, because she knew if she did, he would try to talk her out of it. He would promise to do better. He would say all the right things, and she would want to believe him, and they would end up right back here in 6 months. So instead, she acted. She opened a new bank account at a different bank. Quietly, she began redirecting her paychecks there. She transferred her half of their savings, leaving Conrad's half untouched. She canceled her name from joint subscriptions, joint memberships, anything that tied her financially to him. She made an appointment with a lawyer. His name was Richard, and he was kind without being pitying. He listened as Tanya explained the situation, nodding in understanding. "You have options," he told her, "and you are smart for protecting your assets now." Protecting her assets. It sounded so cold, but it was necessary. Richard helped her understand her rights, what she was entitled to, what she needed to document. He prepared the paperwork, clean and thorough. For 3 weeks, Tanya moved through her life like a ghost. She went to work. She came home. She cooked dinner. She smiled when Conrad talked about his day, but inside she was already gone. And then, one evening, Conrad came home with that same nervous energy he had carried the night of the dinner. He sat down next to her on the couch, fidgeting with his phone. "So," he started, "my parents found the house." Tanya's heart went still. "The house?" "Yeah, they want us to look at it this weekend. And if we like it, they want to put down the deposit next month." "The deposit," Tanya repeated. Conrad nodded. "It is 20,000, but we can do it. If we pull from savings and maybe get a small loan. My dad knows a guy who can help with the financing." $20,000, her money, her savings, for a house she would never own. Tanya looked at Conrad, really, truly looked at him, and she felt nothing but sadness. "Who would be putting down the deposit?" she asked quietly. Conrad hesitated. "Well, both of us, but mostly you. My savings are a little tight right now." "Mostly her." "Of course." "And whose name would be on the house?" Another hesitation. "Mine, but Tanya, it is for us, for the family." There it was, the same script, the same manipulation dressed up as love and obligation. Tanya stood up. She walked to the bedroom, opened the nightstand drawer, and pulled out the envelope she had been keeping there for the past week. She came back and handed it to Conrad. He frowned, confused. "What is this?" "Open it," she said calmly. He did. She watched as his face went from confusion to shock to disbelief as he read the divorce papers. "What the hell is this?" he said, his voice rising. "Tanya, what are you doing?" "I am choosing myself," she said simply. "Over what? Over me? Over our marriage?" "Over being treated like an ATM with no voice and no value," she said, her voice steady. "I am done, Conrad. I am done giving everything and getting nothing. I am done being silent while your family takes and you let them." "You are overreacting," he said, and even now, even holding divorce papers, he could not hear himself. "We can talk about this. We can work it out." "No," Tanya said. "We cannot because you do not see the problem. You never have." "My family loves you," Conrad said desperately. "They are just trying to help." "They love what I can give them," Tanya corrected. "My money, my compliance, but they do not respect me, and neither do you." "That is not fair." "Maybe not," Tanya said, "but it is true." Conrad stared at the papers, his hands shaking. "So that is it? You are just giving up?" "No," Tanya said. "I am finally standing up." The divorce was finalized in 3 months. Conrad did not fight it, maybe because he was too shocked. Maybe because, deep down, he knew she was right. Tanya kept everything that was hers. Her savings, her car, her dignity. She did not ask for anything that was not rightfully hers. She just wanted out. When Felicia and Robert found out, they were furious. Felicia called Tanya, her voice shrill with anger. "How could you do this? How could you break up this family?" "I did not break up anything," Tanya said calmly. "I just stopped letting myself be broken." "You are selfish," Felicia spat. "Selfish and ungrateful. We welcomed you into this family." "No," Tanya said. "You welcomed my bank account. There is a difference." She hung up before Felicia could respond. Robert tried a different approach. He showed up at her new apartment one day, unannounced, just like old times. "We can fix this," he said when she opened the door. "Whatever happened, we can work it out." "There is nothing to fix," Tanya said. "I am not coming back." "You are making a mistake. Family is everything." "You are right," Tanya said. "Family is everything. That is why I am protecting mine." He did not understand, but he left. Without Tanya's income, the family's grand plans collapsed. The house deal fell through when Conrad could not get financing on his own. George's business failed within 6 months, leaving him in debt. Felicia and Robert had to take out a loan to cover their own expenses they had been covering with borrowed money they never intended to repay. And for the first time, there was no one to quietly fix their mistakes, no one to bail them out, no one to sacrifice themselves on the altar of family obligation. Conrad called her 4 months after the divorce was finalized. His voice was different, tired, smaller. "You were right," he said. Tanya said nothing, just listened. "They were using you, using us. I did not see it, or maybe I did not want to see it, but you were right." "Okay," Tanya said. "I am sorry," Conrad continued. "I should have protected you. I should have stood up for you. I was a coward." "Yes," Tanya said, "you were." Silence stretched between them. "Can we try again?" He asked finally, his voice hopeful. "I am different now. I see things clearly." Tanya took a deep breath. "I am glad you see it now, Conrad. I really am. But no, we cannot try again." "Why not?" "Because I do not trust you," she said honestly. "And I do not love who I became when I was with you. I lost myself trying to make everyone else happy. I am not going back to that." "I have changed," he insisted. "Maybe you have," Tanya said. "But I have changed too. And the person I am now knows what she deserves, and it is more than what you were willing to give." She hung up gently, and she did not cry. A year later, Tanya stood in her own apartment, a real one-bedroom she had saved for and bought herself. Her name was on the lease. Her money was her own. Her life was her own. She had started therapy. She had reconnected with old friends she had lost touch with during the marriage. She had even started dating again, slowly, carefully, with boundaries firmly in place. She was not the same woman who had walked down the aisle toward Conrad. That woman had been soft and eager to please, willing to bend herself into shapes that hurt just to keep the peace. This woman was different, stronger, clearer. This woman knew that love without respect was not love at all. That family was supposed to lift you up, not drain you dry. That silence was not peace, it was just postponed pain. She had learned the price of silence, and she had decided she would never pay it again. One evening, as Tanya sat on her couch with a cup of tea, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It was Felicia. The message was long, rambling. It talked about regret and misunderstandings. It said they missed her. It asked if she would consider coming to dinner just to talk. Tanya read it twice, then she deleted it. Not out of anger, not out of bitterness, but because she had already given that family enough of herself. She had nothing left to give them, and more importantly, she did not want to. She was done being the person who sacrificed herself for people who never saw her value. Done being quiet, done being convenient. She was finally, beautifully, freely done. And in that ending, Tanya had found a beginning. A beginning where she came first, where her voice mattered, where her boundaries were not negotiable. She had lost a marriage, but she had gained herself back. And in the quiet of her own home, surrounded by things she had chosen and paid for and built on her own terms, Tanya smiled. Because she had finally learned the most important lesson of all. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and you should never set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. She was done burning. And now, finally, she was free. The whisper that changed Tanya's life was not a grand revelation. It was not dramatic or loud. It was the small, persistent voice inside her that had been saying, quietly for months, "You deserve better than this." And the moment she finally listened, everything changed. Not overnight, not easily, but completely. Because the truth is, healing does not happen in the big moments. It happens in the small ones, in the decision to separate your bank account, in the choice to say no, in the courage to walk away from people who only love what you can do for them, not who you are. Tanya had learned that the hard way. But she had learned. And now she was teaching herself a new lesson, one about self-love, about boundaries, about the quiet, powerful act of choosing yourself. Not because you are selfish, but because you are worth it. And as Tanya sat in her little apartment, sipping her tea, watching the city lights twinkle outside her window, she knew one thing for certain. She would never be silent again. She had found her voice, and she was never letting it go.